Good morning and welcome to Money Talks. I'm Nikki Boxler and I hope your week is off to a great start. On today's show, I am joined by Mike Lomas and Glenn Wiggle of the Financial Guys. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you. Having us. Well, we both are on together.
I know, for once. Usually one of you is here and the other one's in the office, so it's nice to see both of you at the same time. We tied him up for a few
weeks. He's actually, Glenn's been in the office by himself for 6 weeks, tied him up there.
Locked in the conference room.
Yeah, busy. Tax season is a busy time, right? So.
Absolutely. Yep, always a busy time.
Well, I'm glad you're able to get out of the office and that Mike's not tying you up anymore. Now, let's start with the stock market. After the election, there was a big bump in the stock market, and now it seems to be sizzling out. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it was a good rally overall, right? So we had the election, and we had about a 15% rise in the market, which was almost straight up. I mean, we had very few pauses. So to have a pause at this point is pretty natural, right? I mean, there's a couple of reasons why it's happening, but you know, for the markets to take a break and kind of go sideways or even pull back a little bit, and for some gains to kind of be consolidated is not an uncommon thing after such a run up over the last, say, you know, 6 or so, well, not quite 6 months, but 4 months or so. The other thing is that we've created some uncertainty now with the whole vote on Obamacare, right, or the repeal or the bill that was put forth. I think there was a lot of expectations after the election about repealing Obamacare, getting some tax cuts in place, you know, revising the whole tax code. And now some of that seems to be almost in jeopardy, and certainly the Obamacare repeal bill went down in flames, as it should have, to be honest with you, because it wasn't a very good bill to begin with. But that creates that uncertainty on Wall Street where they're going to kind of take a step back and say, maybe we should just wait a little bit and see how this whole thing rolls out. And of course, it didn't roll out very well, so that's going to create some uncertainty, which is going to cause some volatility.
And as you know, right, the last few weeks I've been saying taxes, 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 right? I mean, that should be the #1 priority of the Trump administration is tax cuts. It is the biggest stimulus to economic growth. There is no a government filter. You know, it's so funny how when the government says they're going to return the Buffalo billion, but they take $15 billion out of your pocket and then return $1 billion, there's no filter when it comes to tax cuts. It is the biggest thing. And as Glenn pointed out, you know, you have uncertainty about the Republicans being able to get out of their own way to repeal Obamacare, which has been a total nightmare, and it's falling apart on its own. Now the next fear is, are they going to be able to give us the tax cuts that they promised us? And again, as I've been saying on this show week in and week out, tax cuts, we need them. That's what's going to get economic growth moving again.
Well, so now it kind of sounds like you guys, for the stock market, it does have potential to grow even more.
Absolutely. I mean, the market, you know, we're pretty young into you know, this rally here, and I think we've got some legs. The optimism is key, right? So you're already seeing the optimism right after the election, consumer sentiment numbers, consumer confidence, small business optimism, all start to hit 10-year highs that they haven't, levels they haven't been at. And so that optimism, you know, is allowing companies like Ford and others to invest again in this country, which is going to help to boost the economy, which will help to grow the stock market. Getting back to tax cuts for just a second, Obamacare, even though it was a health care bill, was the largest tax increase that this country has ever seen. And so to get rid of Obamacare and to repeal it would be the largest tax cut that this country has ever seen. Unfortunately, what the Republicans in Congress, led by Paul Ryan, have done is they put forth a bill that basically put what they thought was a conservative wrapper around the socialist policy, which is ridiculous. There was a senator from Alabama, or a congressperson from Alabama, that just put out a bill that's a 2-page repeal bill. That's what they should be voting on in Congress, is to repeal Obamacare completely and then begin to build in some of those free market type of principles that we agree with, like competing across state lines and more competition and more free market solutions.
To Glenn's point, we've been bashing the Republicans for the last few weeks, and rightfully so, because you know, they continue to do this, right? They continue to say, hey, look, I'm a conservative, vote for me, smaller government, lower taxes, and then they get into office and it's like, my big government plan is better than your big government plan. And here we are again, right? And to Glenn's point, look, you get rid of Obamacare, that's a huge tax cut, and that's money back in people's pockets. And I continue to say this week in and week out, right? I don't care if you're a teacher, a firefighter, a widget maker, or a CEO, you pay taxes upon taxes, and that money's going to, it's wasted, right? Nobody can find a road or bridge that's been built throughout the whole stimulus plan over the last bunch of years, but there's $20 trillion in debt, right? Give it back to the people that go to work and earn it. Give it back. That's how you get this economy growing again at 3, 4, 5%.
So what should investors be looking at in terms of Congress?
Well, I think they need to get something done, right? I mean, so far, I think President Trump has done a pretty good job with his executive orders and things like that.
Why start now?
Right, exactly. But I mean, Congress needs to get something done. I mean, you got to remember, in the first 100 days of the Obama administration, they passed the Lilly Ledbetter Act. They were already well on their way for Obamacare. I mean, there's a number of things that the Democrat Congress did successfully in those first 100 days that the Republicans are not even close to getting anything done. Yeah. So while President Trump is doing a good job on getting some, regulations off the books and things like that, Congress is not keeping up at all.
What are some of the things that you think he has done successfully in his first 100 days of office?
You want to take that?
Sure. Well, number one, he started to use his pen and his phone, just like Obama did, to undo some of the damage and the regulations that Obama has done. So
executive orders.
Yeah, so things like the Department of Labor fiduciary rule. We all agree in the industry that having a fiduciary standard for IRAs is a plus, and we all agree with that. You could have done that in 2 pages. The Department of Labor under Obama did it with 1,000 pages, and there's a lot of garbage in that. And so one of the first things he did was he put that off for at least a couple months so they can revisit and look at that. He's also rolling back the EPA rules. He's also rolling back some of the Clean Air and Clean Water Act rules, so it allows our coal miners and our other businesses and industries to be able to expand and grow again. Obama single-handedly crushed the coal industry in this country. He put companies out of business that were 100-year-old businesses. Arch Coal is gone. Peabody Energy is gone, right? I mean, you're talking about huge companies that have 75-year history that were wiped off the map by former President Obama keeping his boot on the throat of those industries. President Trump has done a good job in attacking those types of things where he's able to do it on his own without having to use Congress, and by using those executive orders to roll back those regulations and essentially lift that weight off of the businesses and the industries that has had that boot on their throat and allowing them to grow again. So I think that's been a great thing.
Let me add one other point to that too, is that one thing he's been very successful at doing is being optimistic. And I know that sounds pretty simple, but he has supported the business leaders in this country. He has reached out to them and said, look, we are going to support you. We're not going to attack you anymore. As Glenn said, Obama actually said at one point, I'm going to put my boot on the throat of corporate America. And he did that. He did it through higher taxes, higher regulations. Now you have Donald Trump saying, look, I'm going to do just the opposite. I'm going to support you. I'm going to do whatever it takes to allow you to grow your business and run your business the way you think is the most efficient way to do that. And I'll tell you, leadership is important. It's important in a company. You look at the best companies in the country, they have great leadership. You look at America, you want America to grow again at 4%, 5%, 6% a year, which we have the potential to do. And, to get true unemployment rates down, get 50 million people off of food stamps and working again. Part of that is to say to the people that create jobs, hey, I'm not going to crush you anymore. I'm here to support you. I'm going to fight for you. And we see that with a lot of our small business owners. They're saying, okay, I feel like at least somebody's got my back now. At least, maybe we're not going to accomplish some of the things that he says we're going to, but at least he's trying. Right. I don't feel like he's going to attack me anymore. And that's what happened of 8 years under Obama.
And recently I did read somewhere that there has been a big push now. A lot more people are buying American again because of the quality and everything that's America is producing compared to overseas products.
And you're seeing businesses invest in America again as well. I mean, Ford just announced investments in 3 new plants in Michigan, right? Whirlpool's staying, and there's, so many good things. But as Mike mentioned, Ronald Reagan did that very successfully. He was very pro-business. He was, supportive of the American entrepreneur and the business owner. And that's important to know that you have somebody in the White House or an administration that is going to be supportive of business. I mean, it's tough to, when you're a business owner, we've been business owners for almost 20 years now, right? We don't want to go out and invest and buy a new building or add new labor when we're looking at an administration that's saying, you guys didn't earn that, or you didn't build that. That wasn't you. You didn't do that on your own. Somebody else did that for you.
It's a slap in the face,
It's
really,
a slap
for
in the
all
face.
of your hard work.
Absolutely. It's very insulting. We were 26 and 24 years old when we left and started the Financial Guys. We were very young, and it was a hard thing to do. And we did it. And I'm proud of what we did. And I'm proud of what we've built. We've built a huge organization in Western New York, and we employ a lot of people, and it's a wonderful thing. And for a president or anybody to come out and say, you didn't build that, somebody else made that happen, you wouldn't be in that position if it wasn't for the help of other people, is crap, to be quite honest with you. And it's insulting. Yeah. And so for an administration to have and provide that optimism back to the business owners to say, you know what, I've got your back. I'm going to help you. I believe in what you're doing. You're the backbone of this country. You're the ones that are creating the jobs. 2/3 of businesses or jobs are created by small business in this country. And that's important to remember.
Yep. Yep. And we've got the best labor force in the world, hands down.
Absolutely.
Right? That's the misconception. People say, "Wow, there's jobs going overseas because we can pay them less." Well, that's a little bit true, but the reality is that we have the best labor force. Unfortunately, when you make $1 in the United States of America, you don't get to keep $1. You only get to keep 50 or 60 cents, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, it's really tough. I really hope that this does help small businesses. We need to take a quick break. Stay tuned. Money Talks will continue. Welcome back to Money Talks. I'm back here with Mike Lomas and Glenn Wiggle from the Financial Guys. Now, before the break, we were talking about things that Trump has been doing well since he's been in office. Now, are there some areas that he has made budget cuts that you think he shouldn't have made them?
Well, I think, if there's a concern I have, and we've talked about this on our radio show on News Radio 930 WBN time and time again, it's our concern about how he's going to handle trade. There's no secret that we are getting hurt with some of our trade policies. It's not fair. It's not fair when we sell an automobile to Japan and they charge a tax and they sell one here and they don't. But you've got to be really careful and almost massage those deals in the right way, because it's real easy. I've been saying trade's a little bit like a marriage, and it's real easy to turn a little problem into a big problem. And, then you've got both sides that are real stubborn and they're doing this as opposed to getting things done. The best answer for us is to not have a tax when we sell stuff in other places, right? Example, automobiles, General Motors, Ford, right in our backyard. I want those people making more money. I want their pensions stronger. I want their wages better. The only way that's going to happen is if we sell more cars. And one way to do that is to make our cars more attractive overseas, right? To be cheaper overseas. They can afford more automobiles. Let's make more of that stuff here. Let's get those guys and girls back to work. And, you got to be real careful when trade wars start to happen. It's real easy to say, we're getting a bad deal, they're getting a better deal. You just got to negotiate that. So it's the art of the deal. I hope you can figure it out.
Yeah, which is interesting you say that, because I know when I've visited Europe, a lot of the cars over there are made there.
Yeah.
You don't really see any American-made cars, and if you do, it's very rare.
Right, because it's an unfair trade deal, right?
Yeah.
I think we would much rather see the carrot versus the stick. And I think President Trump oftentimes picks up the stick first to say, if you leave the country and you take jobs, we're going to punish you by bringing them back in. We would much rather see them create an environment with the carrot that makes it more attractive for them to keep the businesses here. Lower corporate tax rates, lower regulatory burdens, and things like that, so that companies want to have their plants in this country, not put them overseas. As Mike mentioned, it's not so much the cost of labor, it really is the cost of regulation. It's difficult. It might take 5 years to go through the red tape and the bureaucracy to build a new automobile plant, when in China you can get it done in 3 months or 6 months, right? Because you don't have all the red tape, you don't have the bureaucracy and the hoops that you have to run through. And so we would much rather see him use the carrot and incentivize businesses to grow in this country, as opposed to pick up that stick and threaten businesses that want to potentially take their companies overseas.
I will say, as over the last, let's say, 2 to 3 weeks, I've seen his tone change a ton, and I do think he's getting the right leadership. He has been surrounding himself with some of the brightest people on Wall Street, guys like Larry Kudlow, who get it, who really get it. So I'm optimistic that he's going to do the right things there. But he certainly came out of the gate, as Glenn said, with a baseball bat, as opposed to, here's how we're going to make America great. You want jobs here? Money is like water. It's going to flow to the easiest place, right? And right now, flowing money to America is very difficult. We say, hey, you're profitable. You've worked hard. We'll steal half of it. That's not an easy place to do business, right? An easy place to do business is, Dubai or Ireland, where they're saying you get to keep 90% of your money. That's a big deal.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, and I love that analogy with the carrot versus the stick, because I think you're right. He definitely
You didn't like my water one?
No, no, I like yours too. I mean, I just really like carrots, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, I like he came out when he became president very harsh, and I think, like you said, his tone was...
Yeah, he softened up a bit.
Yeah.
But America needed some of that. I mean, really, truly, and I continue to say this time and time again. Look, we are $20 trillion in debt. I mean, at some point, we need to put our big boy pants on and say, let's make some changes here, right? What we're doing is not working. I know we're not talking about the school system, but we talked about that a few weeks ago, right? It's amazing to me. Look at the city of Buffalo. Like, everybody complains about, guys like Carl Palladino who are trying to fix the school system. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, has it been broke for 40 years? Oh yeah, it has.
That's right.
So we need to change something. When you have 40% graduation rates, we need to change something.
Yep, I'm going to cut you off because we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Mike and Glenn. So stay tuned. tuned. Money Talks will continue. Welcome back to Money Talks. I'm here with Mike Lomas and Glenn Wiggle from the WBEN Financial Guys. Now, I want to take this kind of back to investing. So moving forward in terms of Obamacare and all the taxes that we talked about, what should investors be looking at moving forward in the next couple of months?
Well, I think Congress has to accomplish something. I think that's important. I mean, the markets have risen based on a set of expectations of repealing Obamacare, lower corporate tax rates, lower marginal tax rates, putting more money in people's pockets. If all of that fizzles and doesn't get done, then the markets are going to go back to the pre-election levels because that's what it's going up and anticipating, right? So they've got to accomplish something. They really need to, put a bill forth to repeal Obamacare or put a tax bill forth that they can actually vote on and get together on. The Republican Party is really split into two. We've got the rhinos in Congress, Paul Ryan and his cabal, and then we've got the conservative, Tea Party type of, right-wingers, if you will. And what I think President Trump needs to realize is that he was elected by the conservative Tea Party type folks. He wasn't elected by the rhinos. He wasn't elected by the Democrats. He was elected by the conservatives. And I'm a little bit disappointed that he's decided to work with Paul Ryan, and now he's even talking about potentially working with the Democrats on a repeal and replace bill. I don't want a replace bill. The Tea Party folks don't want to replace bill, right? We want a repeal bill. Let's take it off the table completely, take away all those extra taxes that we're all paying, the extra 3.8% in capital gains tax and everything else that went with it, and let's start again and put something forth that increases competition, goes back to the free market, lowers the mandates. And on the corporate tax side of things, that's huge, right? As we mentioned in the last segment, Ireland's at a 12 to 14% corporate tax rate. It's hard to compete when we're at 35 to 40% corporate tax rates. And, to simplify the tax code is important as well. We have a tax code now that is about that thick, and it's a whole bunch of special interests. It's not right. I think everybody on both sides of the aisles, Democrats and Republicans both, would agree that it's not right for a General Electric to make $40 billion and pay nothing in taxes. They do that by using tax credits. They can hire an army of ex-IRS agents and tax attorneys. You and me and Mike, and we can't do that, right? We don't have the ability. And so the tax code's gotten so complex and so complicated that only the large corporations are able to avoid some of those taxes. I like his plan. President Trump has put forth a great plan. Simplify it, bring it down to maybe 3 or 4 different tax brackets, eliminate the deductions, and I think you'd see the market fly if you could get that streamlined.
So what do you think his next priority should be?
Let me just kind of, to Glenn's point, to add to that, I think really what his next priority should be is to find the people that he can work with, right? Yeah. He seems to be wanting to work with guys like John McCain who continue to throw him under the bus.
Right.
I don't understand that, right? The other thing is when it comes to the stock market, I continue to hear people say, well, Dow 20,000, should I be nervous about that number? And I'll say, look, it's just a number, but the fact of the matter is we've had 8 years under Obama of the worst recovery from a recession in U.S. history, right? Our total growth was about 16%. Economic growth, right? Compare that to other periods where we've rebounded after a recession, and the rebound has been anywhere between 38 and 58% on the upside. And people say, well, what's the difference between 38 and 58? Well, the difference is the bigger the damage on the downside, the better we did on the upside. I would argue that we had the most amount of damage since the Great Depression, if not even worse, and our rebound was not even half of what it normally is during the recovery of a recession.
So do you think now we're going to start seeing some of that rebound?
I think, and I'll continue to say this, look at these things: debt, taxes, regulation, and safety. If those 4 things happen, forget about looking at the stock market on a daily basis. If those 4 things happen, we go to Dow 60, 70, 100,000, right? If they don't happen, we continue to do what we've been doing, which is European-style socialism, and the market continues to trade sideways. And to Glenn's point, the market will fall back to those pre-Trump levels if we don't start accomplishing some of these things.
Yeah, and the tax cuts are key, right? If you go back, especially capital gains taxes, we went from a 15 back to 20% capital gains tax. When we originally cut them back in 1998, Bill Clinton took it from 28 down to 20, and the revenue to the Treasury soared, right? In the early 2000s, we took it from 20% down to 15. And guess what? Same thing happened. The revenue to the government soared. If we want more revenue to the government and we want to get the economy growing, then those targeted tax cuts, especially in capital gains, to incentivize people to make those investments are huge. Yeah. President Bush finally got it right. He came out in 2001 with some minor tax cuts that didn't work out so well. He came back in 2003. They passed it in May. One of the big things that it did, as I mentioned, is to cut capital gains taxes from 20 down to 15%. By doing so, in the third quarter of 2003, the economic growth was between 6 and 7%. 6 and 7%. Obama didn't put that together in his first 4 years in office.
Total, right? And think about this one last story. I know we got to wrap up. We got to go.
Actually,
we gotta
I'm
go?
going to cut you off. Yeah,
next
so that's
week.
all we have time for
Next week.
today.
Tune in next week.
If you would like more information, you can reach Glenn and Mike by calling the financial guys at 633-1515. That's 633-1515. I want to thank you for tuning in. We hope you have a wonderful week, and God bless.